The chip war just got wild because China just dropped a bomb that nobody saw coming. A chip that doesn't use silicon runs 40% faster than Intel's best and completely changes the game. Look, we all know chips run the world, right? Your phone, your car, literally everything. And for decades, silicon has been the king. Intel, TSMC, Samsung, they've all been fighting to make silicon chips smaller and faster. But here's the thing, silicon is hitting a wall. Enter Peking University. These scientists just published something in Nature Materials that's making Intel executives sweat. They built a transistor using bismuth instead of silicon. And I'm not talking about some theoretical lab experiment that'll take 20 years to develop. This thing is already outperforming the competition. Professor Peng Halen and his team straight up said, "It is the fastest, most efficient transistor ever." Not gonna lie, that's a bold claim. But here's where it gets crazy. They tested it against Intel, TSMC, Samsung, and even Belgium's top chip research center. And it beat all of them, under the exact same conditions. 40% faster, 10% less energy. Let that sink in. Now, before you think this is just another tech story, let me explain why this is actually insane. The entire global economy runs on chips. Your iPhone needs advanced chips. Your Tesla, packed with them. AI, military weapons, space tech, it all needs cutting-edge semiconductors. And right now, there are basically two companies that can make the most advanced chips in the world: TSMC in Taiwan and Samsung in South Korea. Intel's been struggling to keep up. Everyone else? Not even close. But China's been locked out. The US has been hitting them with export controls for 3 years straight. In December 2024 alone, the US banned 140 Chinese companies from buying advanced chip-making equipment. They cut off access to the machines that make 3-nanometer chips. They restricted high-bandwidth memory. They even blocked the software needed to design these chips. The message was clear: you're not getting our tech. So China said, fine, we'll build our own. All right, let's break down what makes this chip special without getting too nerdy. Traditional chips use something called FinFET technology. Think of it like building a skyscraper. The gate wraps around 3 sides of the transistor. But Peking University used GAA-FET technology, gate all-around field effect transistor. Instead of 3 sides, it wraps around all 4. Professor Peng described it like replacing tall buildings with connected bridges. Electrons can move way easier, which means faster performance and less wasted energy. But here's the real game changer: the material. Instead of silicon, they used bismuth oxyselenide. This is a 2D material, which means it's insanely thin. We're talking atomic level thin. And here's why that matters. Silicon starts breaking down at really small sizes. When you try to make transistors smaller than 10 nanometers, silicon struggles. Electrons don't move through it as efficiently anymore. Bismuth doesn't have that problem. It's got way higher electron mobility, which means electrons zip through it faster even at microscopic scales. And get this, China controls over 70% of the world's bismuth reserves. So, while the US is blocking them from buying silicon chip-making equipment, China is sitting on a massive supply of the exact material they need for the next generation of chips. This isn't just about faster computers. This is about power, real, global power. The US has been using chip technology as a weapon. They know that whoever controls advanced semiconductors controls AI, controls military tech, controls the future economy. That's why they've been so aggressive with sanctions. But those sanctions, they might have just backfired. Hard. Professor Peng even admitted it. While this path is born out of necessity due to current sanctions, it also forces researchers to find solutions from fresh perspectives. In other words, the US pushed China so hard that they stopped trying to catch up and started innovating completely new technology instead. If China can scale this technology for mass production, it won't need ASML's lithography machines. They won't need Intel's manufacturing processes. They'll have leapfrogged the entire silicon supply chain that took the West 50 years to build. Now, before everyone freaks out, let's be real about where this technology actually is. Right now, It's a lab breakthrough. They've built transistors and small logic units. They've proven the concept works. But building billions of these things on a single chip and mass producing them reliably? That's a whole different challenge. It could take 5, 10, maybe even 20 years before you're buying a laptop with a bismuth-based processor. The semiconductor industry moves slowly when it comes to changing fundamental materials. There are thousands of processes that need to be redesigned, tested, and scaled up. Plus, the current chip giants aren't just sitting around. Intel, TSMC, and Samsung are all working on their own advanced GAFET designs using silicon. They've got decades of manufacturing experience and billions in R&D budgets. But here's the thing, China has something the West doesn't: desperation and determination. And history shows that's when the biggest breakthroughs happen. So where does this leave us? The chip war just went from who can make things smaller to who can fundamentally change the material. And that's a totally different game. The Peking University team is already working on scaling up production. They've published their research, which means the entire global scientific community can now build on this work. And with China's government pouring hundreds of billions into semiconductor independence, they've got the funding to push this forward fast. For companies like Intel, TSMC, and Samsung, this is a wake-up call. They can't just rely on making silicon smaller anymore. They need to start exploring alternatives, and fast. For the U.S. government, this proves that export controls might not be the silver bullet they thought. You can slow down your competition, but if you push them hard enough, they might just innovate their way around you. And for the rest of us, we might be witnessing the beginning of a completely new era in computing, one where silicon is no longer king, and where the next generation of AI, smartphones, and technology is built on something entirely different. See, what makes this even crazier is the timing. Right now, the entire world is in an AI arms race. OpenAI, Google, Meta, they're all burning through chips like there's no tomorrow. Training one advanced AI model can use thousands of high-end GPUs, and right now, there's a massive chip shortage for AI applications. Companies are literally fighting over NVIDIA's H100 chips. They're so valuable that there's a black market for them. Entire servers with 8 NVIDIA chips, worth over $300,000, are being smuggled across borders just to get around U.S. export restrictions. That's how desperate people are for advanced computing power. Now imagine if China can mass-produce chips that are 40% faster and use 10% less energy. That's not just a technical achievement, that's a potential monopoly on next-generation AI infrastructure. Every company, every country that wants cutting-edge AI capabilities might have to go through China instead of the U.S. And here's something wild. China's already been developing their own AI models. They've got systems that, according to experts, are only about a year behind GPT-4. Now give them access to chips that outperform anything the West has. That gap closes fast. Real fast. For regular people like you and me, this could completely change what we buy and how we buy it. Right now, if you want the fastest phone, the best laptop, the most powerful gaming PC, you're buying something with chips made using American or allied technology. Intel, AMD, Qualcomm, and Apple's chips are made by TSMC. But what happens when Chinese phones and computers have processors that legitimately outperform everything else? And they're cheaper because China controls the bismuth supply chain and doesn't have to pay licensing fees to Western companies? We could see a complete flip in the market. Samsung and Apple might have to start buying Chinese chip technology. Or they'll be forced to develop their own bismuth-based alternatives just to compete. Either way, consumers win because competition drives innovation and lowers prices. But it also raises serious questions about data security, privacy, and technological dependence. Do Western governments let their citizens use devices with Chinese-developed chips? Do they ban them like they banned Huawei? Because if these chips are genuinely superior, banning them means accepting inferior technology. And this doesn't just affect computers and phones. Advanced chips power everything. Your car has dozens of semiconductors. Modern military jets have hundreds. Hospitals use them in medical imaging equipment. Power grids need them for smart energy management. If China achieves semiconductor independence with technology that's actually better than what the West has, it fundamentally reshapes global power dynamics. Countries that rely on Chinese chips for critical infrastructure become dependent on China. Just like how Europe became dependent on Russian gas. And we all saw how that played out. Look, whether you think this is revolutionary or overhyped, one thing's clear: the chip game just changed. China went from being locked out of advanced silicon technology to potentially creating something that makes silicon obsolete. Is it perfect? No. Will it take years to commercialize? Probably. But the fact that it exists at all shows that when you try to contain innovation, you might just accelerate it instead. The West built its tech dominance on silicon for 60 years. But maybe, just maybe, the next 60 years belong to something completely different. And maybe China just gave us the first real glimpse of what that looks like. So Intel, TSMC, Samsung, y'all better be paying attention, because the game just got a whole lot more interesting. What do you think? Is this the future of computing, or just lab hype? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to see more tech breakdowns like this, hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, this chip war is just getting started.